Hello and welcome. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX World. Let's get started with the headlines. Russia's defense ministry claims control over Chervona Zirka in eastern Ukraine, marking another frontline gain. Meanwhile, a Russian drone strike on a 21-story residential building in Odessa has killed 2 people and injured at least 14 others, including 3 children, according to regional governor. The U.S. Supreme Court has handed President Donald Trump a legal win on his birthright citizenship order. In a 6-3 ruling, the court said the order can't be blocked nationwide, only for the plaintiffs involved. The missile launched earlier towards Israel was claimed by Yemen's Houthi rebels, according to reports, while the Israeli army has said a missile fired from Yemen was most likely successfully intercepted, according to media reports. The number of children dying from severe malnutrition in Gaza has climbed to 66 as Israel reportedly continues to blockade access. Gaza officials claim that this deliberate starvation amounts to a war crime under international law. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said Iranians gave their blood but not their honor during the 12-day war with Israel. Speaking during the state funeral conducted today, the leader declared that Iran does not recognize the word surrender. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has awarded Polish President Andrzej Duda the Order of Freedom. The honor, according to the Ukrainian president, recognizes Duda's strong support for Ukraine's sovereignty and bilateral cooperation. A suicide attack in Pakistan has killed 16 soldiers and injured 29 others, including 19 civilians, collapsing 2 house roofs and injuring 6 children. The attacker remains unidentified. Thousands have rallied in Bangkok demanding Prime Minister Shinawatра's resignation over a leaked call with Cambodia's Hun Sen. The protest follows rising anger over a border dispute handling and alleged appeasement of Cambodia. Iran has held a state funeral for approximately 60 military leaders and nuclear scientists killed during the recent 12-day conflict with Israel. The ceremony in Tehran drew large crowds with coffins draped in Iranian flags and portraits of the deceased displayed prominently. Amongst the dead is Mohammad Bagheri, Iran's highest-ranking military officer, who will be buried alongside his wife and daughter, also casualties of the conflict. Iranian officials report a total of 627 deaths in Iran, while Israel confirms 28 fatalities from Iranian missile attacks. The conflict ended with a ceasefire after U.S. military strikes targeted key Iranian nuclear facilities. U.S. President Donald Trump has stated he would consider further attacks if Iran's uranium enrichment reached concerning levels, a stance condemned by Iran's foreign minister, who warned against disrespectful remarks towards Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. Meanwhile, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency has emphasized that military action alone will not halt Iran's nuclear ambitions, calling instead for a negotiated agreement. Ross Feingold, a political analyst, is joining us live from Taipei on this big story. Ross, thank you for being with us today on NewsX World. What do you make of these visuals coming in of the state funeral accorded to various senior military officials and nuclear scientists who lost their lives during this conflict?
I think you just used the key word, and that's visuals. The Iranian regime likes to use these kinds of visuals. They like to have large rallies and big posters of their leaders hanging off the sides of buildings. They like to get people chanting, and their most famous chants are "Death to America" and "Death to Israel." But this kind of performative politics only appeals to a segment of the Iranian population. At this point, it's not even the majority. We know that from the protests that have occurred against the regime in recent years. Most people in Iran, they don't want to be stuck in this never-ending situation where they're at war or close to war with the community of nations. And I think these kinds of public funerals and chanting and the visuals that they create, it just says that it shows again how disconnected the leadership is. And these are people who want nuclear weapons. Even though the civilized world has made it very clear that's an unacceptable situation. And they just want to continue to punish their own people by doing activities like this. We have to be frank. They did lose the war, even though they're saying that they didn't. And now they want to claim that they have a victory and have big rallies. But really, the smartest thing for Iran to do would be to accept the offer made by President Trump, which is if Iran really wants to have a civilian nuclear energy program, an international consortium could ship in uranium for their nuclear reactors, and sanctions could come off, and Iran could start to become a normal country again. But instead, we see more of the same from Iran, which is abnormality.
Absolutely. Ross, now if we look at those who died in this conflict, how big a blow has Iran suffered militarily and to their nuclear program?
That's a really good question, because this is not the first time that Israel or the United States, for that matter, have assassinated senior leaders of Iran's military or its nuclear scientists, engineers, and physicists. And at least historically, Iran's military hierarchy, as well as its nuclear weapons research and development program, they've been able to recover. However, this is the first time that they've lost so many key people within a short period of time. So at least as of now, it's an open question whether they have people to replace these senior leaders who died in recent weeks. And we can only speculate, and I'm sure that's something that U.S. and Israeli intelligence agencies are working on trying to figure out as well. I mean, we'll know in the coming weeks and months who gets promoted, who gets featured in the news, especially on the military side, because they tend to take a higher profile than the people on the nuclear side. So that's definitely something that we could only say is wait and see.
Ross Feingold, appreciate you joining us with your perspective on that story. The United States Supreme Court has delivered a legal victory to U.S. President Donald Trump by restricting the power of federal judges to issue nationwide injunctions that block presidential policies. This decision came on the final day of the court's current term, with 6 conservative justices in the majority and the 3 liberal justices dissenting. The president has claimed this as a giant win and said that the quote-unquote birthright citizenship hoax has been hit hard due to the decision. The ruling stems from the case involving Trump's January executive order, which sought to deny birthright citizenship to children born in the U.S. unless at least one parent is a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident. 3 federal judges had previously issued nationwide injunctions halting enforcement of that order. The Supreme Court has now ordered those lower courts to reevaluate the scope of their blocks. In her majority opinion, Justice Amy Coney Barrett has said that federal judges should generally limit relief to the plaintiffs involved in the case, not the entire nation. However, the court did not rule on the underlying legality of Trump's order, nor did it allow the policy to take effect immediately. Instead, the justices delayed implementation by at least 30 days. Vibhuti Jha, former Republican Party candidate, is joining us live from New York. Vibhuti, thank you for being with us today on NewsX World. What do you make of this order, and how big a victory is this for Donald Trump?
I would not look, thank you for having me. I wouldn't look at it from a victory-defeat scenario. Let's put it this way, law is law. In democracies, what happens is that, you have 3 branches. Democracy was never intended to, as told to me by a venerable American, democracy was never intended to be the most efficient form of governance, because it operates on the principle of checks and balances. Judiciary, executive, and legislature, they all operate as a check and balances for anybody's excess. So judiciary has now given a verdict. As an immigrant, I'm not against immigration at all. Whatever makes it easy, whatever makes it life easier for people. So in this particular instance, Justice Amy's opinion is a food for thought, that you cannot issue injunctions based on one person's complaint or one person's law that affects everybody. Now think about it, how it affects conversely. If I file something, why must it affect me? Why must it affect anybody else? It's my case. So when in the recent scenario, when Mr. Trump was trying to deport whole lot of illegal immigrants who entered the country, the federal courts had ruled that you have to file separate cases to adjudicate for their exit from the country. So why not the same law? This is the issue which people are getting confounded with. And Politics is dangerous. It's very dangerous, very tricky, because people exploit the emotions of people. That's why I said, in India, if all of us would remember emergency and committed judiciary, the statement that then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had talked about, that justices must give justice rulings in favor of the government because we appoint you. This is a very interesting scenario on the operation of the justice system, because, same thing, Justice Jackson's talk about the imperialism of executive was decried by Justice Amy, by saying you can't have imperialism of judiciary as well. So you look at it from this point of view, rules and laws are always played upon by lawyers for one side or the other. There is no
Yes.
law that is made that can't be challenged in the court of law,
Okay.
and where there already no two opinions exist. So in
Okay.
my opinion, one thing is very true, and last word I want to just say, just as a case filed in a Kadapa or Jumri Taliya court can't be applied to all India, this also begs that same question. Is
What
that valid?
ramifications then would this order have, Vibhuti, on the birthright citizenship policy of Donald Trump?
The birthright is a very tricky issue. The US Constitution provides that anybody born in America is an American citizen. But remember one thing, there are people who also abuse laws. So I know on a personal basis, people who are operating the entire birthright racket in this country, people coming from all over the world, I won't name countries right now, but people are doing tourism, birthright tourism, that you come to America, become a citizen and go back. And it applies to also, unfortunately, I know a case or many such cases where I came on an L1 visa or expat visa for a 2-year assignment. My child becomes a US citizen, and I am already saying my child will be the president of the United States because he or she is born here. So there are certain lacunas in that entire scenario. Just like Sonia Gandhi was not allowed, Sharad Pawar was the one who filed the case against her, that she is not born Indian, so she can't be a prime minister of the country. So each country has to have its own rules. And to that end, I suspect legally this matter will be solved, but it definitely puts significant amount of immigrants into significant inconveniences, because now if there's some things have gone against them, they will have to file a lawsuit. Whether the class action will work or not, we do not know. Proves my point. To say it lightly on a Saturday morning, law is an ass. Deal with it.
Okay. However, we are on a national channel, so we'll have to mind our language a bit, Vibhuti Jha. But thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on that story. Let's quickly move on to more news coming in. A deadly suicide car bomb attack has killed 16 soldiers and injured 29 others, including civilians, in Pakistan's North Waziristan district. According to local officials, a suicide bomber rammed an explosive-laden vehicle into a military convoy in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The powerful blast not only killed and wounded army personnel, but also caused the roofs of nearby homes to collapse, injuring 6 children. 4 of the injured soldiers remain in critical condition. The attack was claimed by the Hafiz Gul Bahadur faction of the Pakistani Taliban. Violence in Pakistan's tribal regions has surged since the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan in 2021. Nearly 290 people, most of them security personnel, have been killed this year alone in similar cross-border violence. The region's instability is further complicated by the long-standing dispute over the Durand Line, the border that separates Pakistan and Afghanistan, which remains unrecognized by Kabul and continues to fuel cross-border tensions. Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat, is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Ambassador Kapoor, thank you for being with us today on NewsX World. What do you make of this latest incident coming to light from the Pak-Afghan region?
Thank you, Uday. As you sow, so you reap is an old saying which applies here. Now, Pakistan has been the epicenter of terrorism for the world, as the world has seen from the last so many decades. And to have a country where, you have madrasas which teach violence and how to use guns to young children who are 5 years, 6 years, 7 years old, is a very great tragedy. So you see, you have received so much of development aid from all over the world, and yet what you have to show to the world is very little progress, hardly any progress. You are still living in a primitive world. So a country where you are taught that doing violence and killing people brings you merit and gives you a passage to heaven and 72 hurs, etc., virgins in heaven. And these sort of teachings are the very basis of the religion, of the cult, which inspires people to indulge in violence all the time. So they have done that outside the country. They have done that in India. We had seen what had happened in Pulwama, where a similar attack had taken place, and they do it inside the country, where violence continues amongst different factions against the government, against the army of Pakistan. So it's a society where the basic bedrock of existence is violence. So the world has to also understand that giving aid to such a country from the World Bank, from the IMF, from the USAID, from other Western countries, what benefit has it reaped for the society, for the citizens of the country, and for the world? It's an anachronism. It's a failed state or a failing state, and you are keeping on reviving the country by giving it artificial oxygen and letting it continue with its very bad track record on the global stage also. So it is unfortunate that even in this case some Pakistani soldiers have died, but when you are yourself the source and the fountainhead of terrorism, and you are the ones who are feeding all those terrorists, you are supporting those terrorists, you are nurturing those terrorists.
Yes. Ambassador Kapoor, and obviously this does indicate that the instability in the North Waziristan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region continues.
Yes, absolutely. So till they, change their very basis of existence and their very basic thought that violence is the way to life, till then it'll continue. It's a very great existential danger to a large part of the world, to the Jewish people, to the Hindus, and to the Christians, because even in demographic terms, their numbers are increasing, their violence is increasing, and we have seen what has happened in Iran, we have seen what has happened between Pakistan and India. So the world has to understand that some very serious, basic, seminal changes are required, and how do we make them so that this existential threat is sort of, curtailed or taken care of. Uday.
All right. My thanks to you for joining us with your perspective, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, on that story. Well, that's all the time we have for today on this show. We will continue to bring you more news and updates from around the world. Stay tuned.